Welcome to Big Blend Radio, where we celebrate variety and how it adds spice to quality of life. Welcome, everyone. Every first Sunday on the Big Daily Blend Show, we get to have Johnny Schaefer sit in as co-host. And Johnny Schaefer is an award-winning singer, songwriter. You can go to his website, hearjohnny.com, not here's Johnny, like in, The Shining. Right, Johnny? You're not The Shining.
Right.
You're the opposite. You're the opposite. I know. We love Johnny on the shows, and we always talk music, or sometimes, really, Johnny, we've covered I've been going through this, as we put up this summer bumper issue together of Big Blend and of our shows and the Big Blend Express magazine. And I'm like, we've covered so many topics together.
We have, yeah.
Family to suicide prevention. I mean, that's not what we're going to talk about today, but we've really covered the gamut, I think, which is amazing. And I love it. I hope you do too.
Well, yeah. And, that's really, music can touch every part of our lives. So, we find ways to weave music into all of our conversations, and it's really lovely. I really enjoy doing it.
Yeah, it's fun. And today we're going to talk about the American MOSAIC. We're going to talk about music that represents America, right? Which is exciting to me because you think about what makes the MOSAIC, right? We're talking about the people, the culture, the place, the people, the people is a big part of it. And so we talk about the geography of it all. We've got Kathleen Walls on the show today as well. Kathleen is a travel writer. You can go to AmericanRoads.net for that. Or if you're interested in her book, she writes a lot of ghost stories, as well as she writes fiction, nonfiction. Yeah, there's all stories. Everything is in there. So you can go to katiewalls.com, and all the links are in the episode notes, but including our music playlist of today, which is called The American MOSAIC. It's on Spotify. So welcome back, Katie. How are you?
I'm doing fine.
It's good to have you back. Now, you have a book on American music, right? Tell everybody about that.
I tried to talk a little about what Johnny's saying, too, how all of our music has merged and come from joining up the different types of music and the different types of people.
Exactly. And so was it hard to write that book? Because you're looking
in some parts flowed and other parts took a lot of looking up.
And is that because we do come from all these different...
Because it is so diverse and it's very hard. Some people, for instance, Tanya Tucker, where do you put Tanya Tucker? I was trying to classify it by genre, but some people don't fit. Johnny Cash is another one. You can't put him in one spot. I mean, he fits so many different, same thing with Tanya Tucker. So many other people just fit in so many different genres. You couldn't say this was a rock and roll singer or this was a blues singer because they were all over the place.
And that's how I am too as a musician. I'm very eclectic. It's funny, one of the things that I always learned, heard a lot growing up in school was America's a melting pot. And that's what I've always loved that we have this wide variety of stuff, and then it kind of seeps into our own personal culture, and I listen to all kinds of music, and then it all blends together in my musical landscape, and then it comes out, and sometimes I'll emphasize one genre or another, but those are the most interesting artists to me. Often are the ones that try new things all the time, and then try to pull different genres together and see how it works out.
Well, you said blend, and so we like that, and that's the point. Well, because everything is connected, and I know in marketing, like we are supposed to all be the niche, and we do that in different ways, but it is important, I think, to understand that everybody's connected in some way, and music has that really good way of doing that, I think. That's just my personal
Even the same song. I think Johnny and I both picked Route 66. Nat King Cole's version of it is totally different than his version. They're both the same song, and yet they're singing the same things.
I'm glad you brought up Route 66 because Route 66 celebrates its centennial in 2026. And I'm there now. We're representing the Jefferson Highway in a guide that we're doing and traveling and doing the conference and all this stuff and doing a podcast on the Jefferson Highway, which goes from Winnipeg, Manitoba to New Orleans, Katie's birthplace.
And New Orleans is interesting.
Yes, so we have some Jefferson Highway songs that people have written, which I think is cool. When we look at the roads of America, that was travel routes, like the Pony Express. And, there were travel routes, not just highways, but trails, the Butterfield Trail. So I'm thinking we've got, travel is a big part of our music. So
Is.
it
And
is.
when
And
you
so
travel, you meet people who think maybe differently or different than you, and you realize we're all people.
Yeah.
And
And
music
hopefully we
and
get better.
literature and writing, any creative art even tells that.
It does. And when you look at music, it'll tell you what was going on in a place. I think the music tells the history. So when we look at American music and America turning 250 next year, isn't that amazing? We've just had 4th of July and here it is, 250 years of America. So we look at our music and the music has always told the truth, as it does art. Anything in the arts has told the truth and has the integrity. I mean, there's other stuff in the arts that doesn't have integrity. We all know that, but you know what I mean? It's always told the history. And if you think about protest music, there's music that talks about, hey, look at the American anthem. So let's start there. So Johnny, your favorite version of the American national anthem, who do you think did the best version? And I'm going to go to you. I mean, Jimi Hendrix kind of blew the lid on that in a way, but I'm just saying.
Yeah.
I know.
Well, I've heard people sing it in wonderful ways. I think I'm going to go with, there's a Stan Kenton big band arrangement of it. And the reason I want to choose that is that when I was in high school, our jazz band went on a tour across America for a month, playing in different cities every night.
What?
And we always played the Stan Kenton Star Spangled Banner. And then when we went up into Canada, the people in Canada actually stood and started singing along. And interestingly, nobody in the American cities did that. And I thought that was really interesting. But I saw the reactions of people over night after night when we played it. And it's a really cool, but also uplifting jazz arrangement. And so, yeah, I think I would go with that as my, just the one that kind of has a special place in my heart.
Well, this talks about music across America. You went on a cross-country journey as a kid, and Johnny is from Porterville, California, which is just outside Sequoia National Park. And Nancy and I have been there. Yeah. But your town, talk about music and place, because we're talking about, place and culture that makes up America. You had bands, high school bands. So these are marching bands, right? That went across the country. You guys played in Disneyland and things, right? Didn't you? And I think at some point the band actually went overseas in the history of Porterville.
Yeah. I mean, both. When I was there, when I lived here, there were 2 high schools, Porterville and Wenatchee. And I was in Wenatchee, but both of them had amazing bands, and we both did a lot of traveling. And like we marched in the London Cavalcade. We weren't allowed to march in the Edinburgh, the annual. I'm drawing a blank on what it's called, but it's really famous band installation. And we performed in the outside of the castle, and it was an amazing trip. But yeah, we marched in the Rose Parade and Macy's Thanksgiving Parade. And then this trip I was talking about was actually our jazz band. And so we spent a whole month in a bus, and every night we were performing in a different city. And we got to stay in the homes of people that housed us a lot of the nights. So you really got a feel for the people as well. And it was a great experience.
So now you know how Nancy and I are as we travel. It's an immersive thing where we get to really experience America. You know what? The first thing we do, both of us, Nancy's like, where's the books? Which a lot of people don't have anymore because of Kindles. Katie, sorry, but that's the truth.
Yeah.
But it's cool.
Know.
When Nancy wants a hardcore, both of us, because screens eventually, we're in front of one. And if you look at my weight these days, you'll say, oh my gosh, she's been sitting at the computer too long. But the other thing is, I'm seeing a resurgence of record players and old, like people who have kept their collections or are now starting to collect vinyl from new bands and current bands. And I think, so we're seeing this interesting changeover. And sometimes that's a way to bond with people as we travel, because for those who are new to the show, Nancy is my mom and the two of us run Big Blend Media, and we pet sit as we travel across the country, documenting parks, public lands, communities. And so as we pet sit, it's a how do we explain this? It's a transfer of things that in other words, we take care of people's homes, pets, and gardens while they travel. No money is exchanged hands. We make our living through what we do. So it's this very open, trusting thing, where we bond over animals and travel. And a lot of times it ends up with music and the arts. And as we record this right now and this airs, we're in an artist home in Lawrence, Kansas, which is an art community. And so we're looking around it. We've got art all around us, all kinds of color. It's vibrant. And you get this sense of hope of American unity doing what we do. So I know the news, everyone's fighting, but with what we do, I think through music, you can go to a show and people will bond over the music and forget what they're arguing about sometimes. Like sometimes music can drown the drama. And so I think that's really cool as a kid that you had that experience traveling America. So one of my songs is called America, and that is by Simon and Garfunkel. It's one of my favorite songs all time. Top 10. They all come for America, so that's so cool that you did that as a kid. And Porterville needs to be put on the map. It is on the map. Because it's a thing, we talk about music, we all forget about kids in marching bands. And what would a sports event be without music? The Super Bowl, or the big game, as we're supposed to say, doesn't exist without the music and the halftime show. Whether or not there's a wardrobe malfunction, it's about the halftime show too for those who don't watch sports, So
we used to perform in. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, you go. You did it. I done it.
We performed in Oakland Raider halftime shows when they were in Oakland, and they actually, if they went to the playoffs, they always had us come back, and we were the band that they chose to play in the playoffs. Wow. And then we also marched in a San Diego Charger game, and I think an LA Rams game too. So we used to, do that, and that was back when they would put the band on TV. So we got to have our band show. Everybody in Porterville got all excited.
Did you do any secret codes to your family and friends when you're do any kind of when you saw the cameras, I
was on the field marching, so we couldn't do that.
I will say this for marching bands: a friend of ours took us to see a USC game, and it was about the USC versus the Bruins, and apparently this is a big rivalry in football. Yeah, and we went to USC campus, and we had no clue we don't know anything about sports. When football comes on TV, Nancy and I put Tchaikovsky Nutcracker Suite on. And honestly, it's the best way to watch football. So just so you know, and Nutcracker Suite is perfect. Seriously, in all ways. In all ways. So that's our introduction into sports. So just know we don't know anything. But I've been to some games. But we went to watch the USC Marching Band. And I was introduced to the USC Marching Band through when Fleetwood Mac came back and they did their album, The Dance, when they reunited. And this was 98, I think. It's when we first started our magazine in this country, and we had a band, and at that time we were studying Fleetwood Mac and the blues, and I kept going to everybody, yeah, Stevie Nicks is cool, but the original Fleetwood Mac with John Mayall and the Blues Breaker, and Peter Green and everything, I'm like, go back to the old thing. It was Otis Spann, and anyway, that's a whole other show. But Fleetwood Mac really went on, and Mick Fleetwood to me is one of the best drummers of the world. And he did things like Paul Simon and went out of the country before Paul Simon. No rivalry here, but they did amazing things, and that's how I learned about the USC Marching Band. It was when Clinton was getting elected, I think, and they performed on stage for the inauguration or something. And I wasn't into it for the politics. I was like, I want to see the band. And the USC Marching Band came out, and I was like, holy cow, look at the power of that band. Fleetwood Mac is great. No Bars, are fantastic. But when the USC Marching Band came on, I was like, this is some powerful.
That was Tusk, right?
Tusk, yes. And I think they did it on another song, Chains. Yeah, but Tusk was it. Yep. I can hear it. I can still hear it. And it moved me so much that that's how we ended up in LA going to some football game going, I have no clue what's going on the stage. Can they bring the band back? And can I go get another beer that's going to cost me $20-$30 or something, in crowds? But it was fun. It was fun. I got to go to Katie. Katie, go back to America's national anthem. What's your song?
Guess I'd say Whitney Houston.
Not your song. Whitney Houston. Oh my gosh. That's
for singing America.
Yeah, no.
To me, the words, Francis Scott Key writing that, looking at the battle, it's always what comes to mind. And seeing that the flag is still there. It's to me. And what Johnny said about people joining in on music, I was at a Willie
Mhm.
Nelson concert, and he had everybody. He was singing the old songs, a lot of the Waylon Jennings and his own old song. A whole audience. It was the amphitheater in St. Augustine was joining in. It was beautiful.
Oh my
Mhm.
gosh. Have you heard Johnny Cash with the, and I don't know the name unless I start Googling and we're in a conversation. He talks about the old flag, American flag.
I'm a ragged old flag. I think
Thank
ragged old
you.
flag is the name of it. He's talking to a man sitting on a park bench, and the man is telling him that the flag might be ragged, but all the battles it's been through.
Mm-hmm. And we're in
Mhm.
another one.
And
So
that's
that's kind
one of
of,
my favorite songs on my list was Battle of New Orleans by Johnny Horton. Because he got the dates a little wrong and the war was really over. But it's just such a cute song, and it just gets across that New Orleans spirit when they were fighting in the Battle of New Orleans.
don't get me started on that, Katie. You know I'll go off on a
It's one
right?
of those songs you just got to sing along with.
Well, no, okay. So when we think about New Orleans, it's like this musical hub, and even the state itself gives money back to, well, helps fund all their festivals. So, like if a town like Lafayette, right? Which I think, are you going to go to that? Or
I'm going to be in Lafayette, but
October? We're going to
pretty
be
sure
there
I
in
have to
November.
buy you one. And IPW in Chicago, and talk to the New Orleans people. I mean, I know I'm from there, but they got me talking. I'm going to go back there again this year.
Listen, Lafayette,
The Cajun
but
in the side, and what is it? That blues place? I'm trying to remember the name of it. It's a little dive, but everybody should go there. It's fascinating. You can't even move, but the music has got everybody just dancing, and they have local bands mostly playing, and either Zydeco or Cajun almost always.
I want to, the Louisiana, is so huge, and there's, you got to think of like Clifton Chenier right now is 100-year anniversary just happened. And, when you think about American music, I mean, Louisiana is the hub of immersion. And yesterday's show, everyone, I'm going to put a link in the episode notes to the folk festival that's happening in Natchitoches, Louisiana on July 19th. I got it. I think, yes, July 19th is the show date. The folk festival in Natchitoches, Louisiana. Natchitoches is the oldest city and settlement in the state. And that folk festival, I can't even tell you how much it moved Nancy and I. And it's because it's the roots music of the entire state, and which brings in multiple cultures, people from the Czech Republic, people from Celtic roots, everyone, indigenous people, and then Cajun Zydeco and all generations. And it's amazing to go to. And Lafayette is massive on music, New Orleans. So I think a lot of people, when they think of Louisiana,
blues and jazz more.
And you think of Dr. John.
Dr. John and Professor Longhair and the Mardi Gras music. I love that. I'll play that. But Jambalaya was more than a song. And I mean, Hank Williams wasn't from Louisiana, he's from Alabama. But when he sang that, before that, including Martin, my whatever you want to call him, husband, ex-husband, whatever, his Cajun, and his people were in school. They were not allowed to speak French. He never learned to speak French. His mother and dad spoke French. When they didn't want him to know what they were saying, they'd switch over to Cajun French. And Jambalaya was a turning point. At that point, the Cajun people again becoming proud of, instead of being ashamed and not admitting that they're Cajun, they were proud again of Cajun because of that song. That one song was a turning point in Cajun culture.
This is interesting. I mean, you got to look at this landscape here. I want to go back to the national thing, the national anthem. I do want to give a shout out to Jimi Hendrix for rocking it and changing everyone's perception in Woodstock. He really did. And then I got to give a shout out to Jack White, who also did an amazing rendition a year or two ago. And he got married on stage after that, or like on a show that he did that night. He got his fiance to marry him. And Jack White is very American. Like he's so soaked in the blues, and he amps it. Yeah, Detroit. He got Third Man Records. He's got a baseball in interior design and all of that. He's like, I know not everyone loves him, but I do. And he stands up for what he believes in. So I love him even more for that. And that's huge. And that's the thing about America's music is I think it's musicians use their voice. And I think that's a powerful thing. But his version, I don't think I can put that on the Spotify unless it's there, but he did a good job of it. And I think Chris Staples, is it Stapleton? Stapleton, I think. Oh my God. No, it's Mavis Staples and Chris Stapleton.
Mavis Waters is the blues singer.
Oh, we're in trouble. No, Muddy Waters in Chicago.
Muddy Waters was a blues singer.
Muddy
back.
Waters is the
Yeah.
dude. Like, if we're going to
Mavis,
talk about American music,
yeah.
you got to go right to,
No,
you
Muddy
know,
Waters was American.
Howlin' Wolf. Yeah.
Howlin' Wolf,
Mhm.
the Mississippi Delta. And you know,
Yeah.
growing up in New Orleans, that was never. You went to the Gulf Coast for vacation. Nobody
It
ever
is
thought
Chris
of going to the
Stapleton.
Delta.
Okay. It's Chris
When I
Stapleton.
say,
I just want to
okay,
get this straight. Okay. Chris Stapleton, because people are going to yell at us. Chris Stapleton did a
we
very
got to
good
get the
job.
names right.
Yes, we are going to get, and it is
Hey,
Mavis.
we're ad-libbing here.
Mavis Staples is my hero. I love, love, love Mavis Staples. I adore her. She's got the grooviest, coolest
Wade in
Earth
the
Mama
water.
voice.
What is it? Wade in the water.
Wade in the water. Yeah, she
Yeah.
did.
And that
Mhm.
was one of the songs that when the black people were trying to escape slavery on the Underground Railroad, that was a way of telling them, get in the water because that will kill your scent and the dogs won't be able to follow you.
I did not know that.
Music said things, and it still does. I mean, good music.
Well, I feel like
There was a lot of code in the spirituals. My friend Roger Groh studied with Chester Hairston, who arranged a lot of the spirituals, and he told so many stories like that where there was a lot of code and a lot of messages to each other through like double meanings. Yeah.
Right, because they couldn't come out and say it. There was another song too that the black people would sing that the white people would think it was a hymn, and I don't remember off the top of my head. But when they talked about the devil, they were really talking about their masters, but comfortable singing the song because they didn't realize what they were saying, the double meaning to it.
Wow. Well, that makes sense. But I always think that church, obviously spiritually is important, right? But church was a place where you could go and, like in Austria and everything, they have coffee shops, France too, Europe, coffee shops where people could gather and talk freely when, as a part of the resistance, and I think that's what
Black
happened
people
in
couldn't
churches,
talk during slavery times, they could only talk in church, and that's why their churches were so powerful.
Yeah, no. Wow, this is fascinating. We're on a roll here. So, okay, we're not just talking about a music playlist here. We're talking about the culture. Now, what about protest songs? Because isn't that part of it? America having a voice. I'm not trying to be political because I don't want people to yell at me, but is part of it. The Universal
Soldier.
Donovan?
No, well, I go further back than that. The indigenous woman, what was her name?
Buffy St. Marie.
Yes, right. And she's right. If every soldier said, no, I will not kill, it's wrong, we would have no war. And that, the words of the song, it's wrong to kill, you always will. And, if every soldier said, no, we won't do it, we wouldn't have any wars. Nobody would be getting killed for nothing. And
That's
the blowing
hard.
in the wind is another one of my, Peter, Paul, and Mary's my favorite ones on that one.
What about you, Johnny?
So many. I mean, all the Bob Dylan songs, we recently watched the film about him with Timothée Chalamet. I'm blinking. I always blink out on the name.
Complete unknown. I loved it. I wish they got more into his personal life a little more.
Yeah, I think it's always with those biopics. It's always a challenge to balance that out.
Yeah.
Showing their the musical side, but seeing the relationship with Joan Baez and just the way that they pushed boundaries, and they wanted him to just kind of stick with the same thing, and he said he wasn't interested in that. And
it's his own person.
And I think I always resist that too when people tell me, why don't you just stick with one? You've had success with this song, so why don't you just do more songs like that? And well, I did that song, and so I think, the way that they were able to capture the emotions and the angst and the frustrations and the message that people wanted. I always think a good song, I always feel like I wish I had written it. And I think a lot of people, they say things that people wish they knew how to say and through music. And that's why people connect with so many of those great protest songs. Throughout.
Look at Sam Cooke. Change is going to come. That is used so much. We're lucky to interview his daughter, Claire, Carla Cooke. And I mean, her voice is amazing. And, he's got an interesting story, and his death is questionable of what happened there. But change is going to come it's like a cry of hope. and united people. And I think through music, when I think about the American landscape, there were also things like, Sammy Davis Jr. and how Frank Sinatra and Dean Martin got him on stage and how they did their part, right, to change things. So there's change through musicians helped change the landscape of music by, fighting for their Black musicians. White musicians helped Black musicians get on stage in places. And, how record companies were ripping off Black musicians for years. Look at what Bunny Raitt has done to create hey, you got to take, you've got to take heed of these amazing musicians and pay them for what you recorded. So I think that's why the arts are so powerful. Music in this country, the musicians have stood up for so many things that when we talk about the American mosaic, we also have to look at how musicians have stood up in process of politics and the environment. Like look at, Bonnie Raitt's a great one on that, but have also stood up for, hey, we've got to get our Black brothers and sisters and the indigenous people into places where they're allowed. People like Ry Cooder, I think, is one of the heroes of our country, Ry Cooder. Because when you look at Americana, he put the indigenous roots people of America on stage and made them, he put them into people's houses through the recordings he's done and movies like the Buena Vista Social Club. I know that's Cuban music, but they're our neighbors. And we have Cubans living in our country, so it's part of our heritage. So I think that sometimes when we look at the American mosaic, we should look at those musicians who paved the way for others to be out front and resist the
Sam Phillips was trying to do in Memphis with the Star Studios when he brought Elvis. He wanted to combine what was then called the Black music and what the music to white people is, and wanted to bring them together. And that's kind of what he did with rock and roll, because a lot of the rock and roll singers, people thought there was one of them, I don't remember who now, but some well-known singer was booked, and when he gets there, the company thought he was a Black singer because his music sounded like that.
Absolutely. When we talked about, you talked recently about the song "Wade in the Water," and so I'm going to wade into some water here that's that may be a little touchy, but I feel like it kind of brings together several of the themes that we've discussed, because we talked about protest music and we talked about the national anthem. And just recently at Dodger Stadium, the Latina singer Neza chose to sing a Spanish translation of the national anthem that was actually commissioned by FDR in 1945. She chose it because FDR had asked for it to be written, and the Dodgers didn't want her to sing it, and she followed her gut and her heart and sang it. It was a very powerful, moving gesture for, the Dodgers have a lot of Latino fans, and they're a big part of the fan base, and they've stuck with the Dodgers through thick and thin. And right now, LA is going through a lot with, the ICE raids and everything. And so it was a gesture of solidarity with, what her people are going through. And I thought it was very brave, and it was a history lesson, and it was a civics lesson. And I thought it was a really brave, beautiful act. And it's a lovely, version of, I loved hearing it in Spanish. And, and I think it just speaks to, the church that I sang in for over 40 years in Hollywood, the Sacrament Church, they did a survey, and we had 35 different languages represented in that church.
Wow.
And so when you go to Europe, you hear all kinds of languages all around you all day long when you're out and about. And I've always loved that notion of, again, the melting pot and coming together. I love listening to music in other languages. There are a lot of French singers I love, and Spanish singers, and I love a lot of Indian music. And, I think that, when we get past needing it, it's always great when you have the translation in front of you so that you know what they're saying. But when we get past needing it to be spoon-fed to us, always in our language and everything, I think it just opens up so much. So I thought it was just worth bringing that up, because I thought that was a very recent example of an artist, taking a risk but for a really good reason. And I thought it was really great.
Well,
Good point.
I'm with you 100%.
Yeah.
And sometimes, the other languages are so beautiful, and we've got to bring in our indigenous people that bring up an amazing music, like you were talking about Buffy St. Marie. But there's so many, Rita Coolidge and what she's done, when we think about the different languages too that come in. Robbie Robertson from the band, what he oh my gosh, okay, this music list may make it to 250 at this. I wanted to bring this up to Katie. You're talking about Johnny Cash, and I know that you brought up the Highwaymen as well. And one of my favorite songs is America Remains. That song to me,
it's our whole history.
It's our whole history of this country,
the
of
gamble,
resiliency.
the stagecoach rider, Cherokee.
Look
I
at the
soft spot for the Cherokee, having lived in Georgia, because when I moved from New Orleans, where Andrew Jackson's the saint, and then moved up to North Georgia, where the Cherokee descendants don't see him quite that way, I got a whole different outlook and got very, very interested in the Cherokee culture.
Yeah, because
I love that song.
That song to me, it tells the different people. It's the story of different
movement was because these people, Johnny Cash and Waylon Jennings and Chris Christopherson and Willie Nelson, they were true musicians.
Oh, don't forget Merle. Don't forget Merle.
Yeah. Well, they were tired of Nashville telling them, you got to do it this way, you got to do it, make it sound like pop music. They wanted to do their own thing and have their own voice. And the other one that I love, the Highwaymen do, it's kind of a deep, dark one, is Born and Raised in Black and White.
Yes, that's right. It's
a
perfect.
Very moving song.
It's very moving, and it's a straight up.
It happens. I mean, those sort of things do happen to brothers.
Yep. So, it's kind of like what happened in the Civil War too,
Right. That happened a lot.
And now families fighting over politics, fighting over politicians instead of
friends. Like I said, I got a Facebook friend that unfriended me when I wrote about the Trail of Tears because I was being un-American. And every fact in that story I had double checked was true.
Wow.
It did cast Andrew Jackson in a very nice light.
But Andrew Jackson was a horrible human being on so many fronts. However, right? The Battle of New Orleans wouldn't have been won without him. And what amazed me is how he got all the Indians from all over Kentucky, Tennessee. He got all the Indians to come in and help, the Native Americans to come in and help fight. And he brought people together. One person that basically he was horrible to the Indians. He was horrible to people. And it was funny because I always bring this up every time I talk about him. During the Battle of New Orleans, he had dysentery and he had diarrhea, and he had a little assistant that would run in and out and make things work, but he was literally on the throne the entire time of the Battle of New Orleans.
And the war was really over at that point, so it really didn't make a big difference.
Well, that's the point. But that was an epic battle, though, because New Orleans could have gone.
But the war really was over. The treaty was being signed. But the interesting thing about him and the Indians fighting, at the Battle of Horseshoe Bend, there was one Indian, I think he was Cherokee, Junaluska. And Junaluska pretty much saved Andrew Jackson's life. And then when Andrew Jackson's president and brings, begins the Trail of Tears and pushes it through, even though the Supreme Court ruled against it, he said, he's going to do it anyway. Junaluska asked for an audience, and Jackson wouldn't even let him in, wouldn't speak to him. And when he came out, Junaluska told the news reporters, if I knew then what I know now, history would have been different. I love that story.
Yeah, well, that's the truth, right?
It is 100%.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what we're talking about, He
did oppose big business and all of this money, fighting the money under one control and stuff. That's the only good thing I can say about him.
Well, let's go back to music. It's more fun. But people write that. Like Ry Cooder, he did a whole album on Jesse James,
I've never heard of him, but I'll have to look that one up.
Oh, Ry Cooder is, so he and Taj Mahal were a duo for years, and then they kind of split up, and they came back together for the Americana Roots Festival. It's like a festival, but like a Grammys for Americana music, and they reunited for that, and he's also an incredible writer. Ry Cooder is one of those people that I would do anything to meet and go to a live show for, and he did a lot in the South and in Texas to bring out like the accordion players. And, he's done a lot globally too, just to bring out the roots music of a place and put them in the spotlight so people will know where they come from. And I think there's going to be a lot of Ry Cooder in this music playlist. But I love the fact that you both, sent music lists that are just massive, and we might make it to 250. And you both had some that are very similar. You had some similar ones in there, which is great. But I want to go to you, Johnny. Like, you brought in, Ventura Highway from America, the band America. I was like, oh yeah, we need to do that, right? You've got the Doobie Brothers, Blackwater. Yeah. Tell us about why you chose the Doobie Brothers with that song. I love that song.
I was trying to, I knew that Katie was going to be on, so she would, be able to cover the South a lot, but I was trying to bring in different parts of the country, and then just Mississippi Moon, won't you keep on shining on me, just popped in my head, and I thought, oh yeah, but that song, it always, I feel like that song painted a picture for me when I was young, and when I would hear it, I would picture the landscape that they were singing about when I heard it, and so I've always loved that song.
Yeah, I've heard that as a kid too, and then when we moved to Julian in San Diego in the mountains and did a jam session, and one of the musicians I know, Kenny, was playing that, and we were doing this whole kind of harmony thing, and I was like, yeah, I really do love the Doobie Brothers. I didn't really realize that. Yeah. And then Blackwater went on our tour and everything, and it didn't hit me until, now as an adult, like an older adult, let's put it that way. So there is Blackwater all throughout like Florida areas and National Wildlife. I'm like, here's the Blackwater. Katie, is that true? It is true. There's Blackwater.
About cannons, and they look black, some of them, yes.
Yeah, some of the areas do. And it's like more in the northern part of Florida that we've seen that. But that song, now I have a funny story on that. I have an episode coming out second Wednesday of this month, July, with Rob Tonkin. And he is a music person who managed tours and has met everyone from Tom Morello to the Doobie Brothers. And one of his stories on the podcast, he wrote a memoir about his touring and then mostly his evolution as a human being. His book is called A-Hole. I can't say the whole thing. It is. And I remember when I was booking him, I emailed him. I said, I've never used that in a subject line, but I am now. But I encourage people to listen to the interview. He was setting up a recording because he was doing a lot of live concerts and recording them for live albums, which, that's the golden stuff, right? And he had the Doobie Brothers. And so the Doobie Brothers are there, their sound check, they're setting it all up for that night. And one of them's like, hey, you want to smoke a doobie? He's like, yeah. And so they smoke a doobie. And then he told their manager, and please tell him like that grass was like killer, He comes back that night, and the guy had it, one of the Doobie Brothers, I can't remember which one, had it all packaged up for him. And he made from the Doobie Brothers. He got to smoke a doobie with the Doobie Brothers. Like, come on, is that not funny? That's the best. I mean, I'm not promoting pot or anything, but I think that's funny. As kids, we always thought, like, imagine smoking weed with the Doobie Brothers. You could say you want a doobie. He did it. Like, that's freaking amazing. I'm not supposed to tell that story until that show airs, but you should all listen to that podcast. It's really cool.
For that one.
Yeah, no, it's cool. But the Doobie Brothers, I mean, that's cool. I mean, and then he, like, the fact that he, like, worked with Tom Morello, like, Rage Against the Machine, come on. Like, that's a hell of a guitarist. And him, and I always talk about him and Bruce Springsteen. If someone's sings for America, it is Bruce Springsteen. He's always done it. Yeah. He worked to save Asbury Park, New Jersey, which we have not been to yet. But like he always told the story for blue collar workers. And I think most musicians sing and like do that. And I think he was one of those, or is, and he's got a huge new portfolio coming out or out now. But him and Tom Morello did The Ghost of Tom Joad. And that's huge. Like to me, when I think about America and where we are. And that all comes from.
Yeah,
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I wanted to add a Springsteen song, and I was thinking of different ones, and I mean, there's even like Philadelphia as a gay person, and then Born in the USA, and he had so many, and then I ended up not putting one because I got distracted.
Okay, I'm adding Philadelphia. Philadelphia, doesn't that song just get you? And that movie,
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Really, it was a really beautiful. I don't think people expected that from him on many levels, and I thought it was really great.
Well, look at him touring with Taylor Swift now. Come on now.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And look at her story, going from a little teenage country music. Like, she's not my thing musically personally, but I have a lot of respect for her. But look at what she's done as a young singer-songwriter. And that's where we look at America as an opportunity, and look where you can go. You know, Katie, when you look at all the musicians that you've written about in your book, and you think about Hank Williams and you think of Johnny Cash, they all started when they were young too.
Right.
It was something they were doing at a young age.
One of the most happiest, most important, I guess, things that I can say was meeting Lum York, who played with Hank Williams. He was one of the Drifting Cowboys, the original ones. And when I met him, I don't usually write interview stories, but somehow that just, I said, I wanted to do that. And I asked him, and he was so nice. I mean, if anybody could have had a right to be stuck up and think he's better than everybody, this man, he played with Buck Owens, Hank Williams. I mean, all of the big people of his day. And he lived in Baton Rouge at that point. I met him, which was about 10 years ago. And when musicians would come to play the Baton Rouge theaters, or, amphitheater, whatever, they would invite him up. And he used to play the bass fiddle, but he had a heart attack and he'd go play the spoons. They would invite him on stage. And he was just so open, and he told me so many stories. And the one about I saw the light, I thought was a neat story. And this explains, I mean, these people were poor people. They had day jobs. Him and Hank Williams both were working hard day jobs, day labor jobs. And then at night they were playing music. And they're coming back from one of these real rough honky tonks in the middle of the night. 5 of them crammed in a car. Their heads slumped down on one another's shoulders sleeping. And Lum York wakes up and he looks. As they got close to Montgomery, there was a radio tower with a light. And he looks up and he sees it, and he says, "Oh, we're getting close to home. I'll see the light." The next day, Hank Williams came down with that song, "I Saw the Light."
Wow.
I mean, that is an inside story from somebody who was there. And
wow,
he was just a wonderful person.
Yeah, there's so many stories like that. Like Levon Helm from the band. So he had a place up in Woodstock. And Amy Helm, his daughter, still tours and is an incredible singer, songwriter, musician. And Shelley King, who's the first Texas state musician as a woman, has been on our show for years. And she wrote a song about Levon Helm. And she goes up to Woodstock all the time and records. She records with the Subdudes out of Muscle Shoals and all of that. And anyways, she was up in Woodstock, and some crazy weird stuff happened. And she basically, the ghost of Levon Helm came in when they were about to record. Like, she had a spiritual thing and wrote a song, and it ended up in the Rolling Stone magazine and stuff. And I'll put that link. I'll have to find that, dig up that record, the recording of the podcast. But everyone, it is fantastic. And so I would look up Shelley King. She did Texas Blue Moon in a way that you wouldn't believe. She's done a lot of Americana. She was born in Arkansas, but she lives in Austin, tours the world, tours the country, tours the world with Caroline Wonderland, who was the guitarist for John Mayall. And she plays with Caroline Wonderland, Amy Helm. Anyway, she's been on stage on Austin City Limits with Gary Clark Jr., which I would say is incredibly badass. Sorry, but Gary Clark Jr. is incredible and also stands up. And I think sometimes musicians come off like it's not ego. You have to have a bit of ego to sell it, to be strong about what you want to say. And it's hard because you're going to have haters going out there. Don't you think that too, Johnny, when musicians get out there?
Oh, yeah.
They're going to be opinionated, say what's going on, and you're putting your foot out there. You're wearing your heart on your sleeve. Yeah. That's hard. It's really hard.
A good example of that. We might be getting political, but Joan Baez came out of retirement a couple of years ago and wrote "Nasty Man" about a certain politician that we know. That was really putting herself on the line.
Well, she did years ago, too. I mean, she's always put herself out there. And she said, "Action is the antidote to despair," my favorite quote of time. And it's true. You are mad at something, do it. But go ahead, Johnny. Yeah.
Well, every time I record it, because I do a fair amount of social issues in my music, and every time I do, I'll lose 5 or 10 followers on Instagram and Facebook and all that. And I get a few nasty messages, or why don't you just focus on, on, neutral things? And I think, it's part of who I am, especially as a gay man. I have to sing about things that matter to me, and I always write from a stream of consciousness. Just song ideas come in my head, and I just write what I'm feeling and what I'm thinking, and so yeah, some of it comes out that way. And I actually got to a point where I feel like, okay, well, at least it moved somebody to the point that they wanted to, quit following me. So it got a reaction, and
You
it gets
lost
people
any
thinking
people.
about it.
Those
It
people are
gets
better
people
off to
thinking,
get
and
rid of them.
yeah, and at least I don't see the point of singing and then not being myself. I guess I could try to just please people, and but I don't see the point of that. My whole thing is using my unique voice and my set of experiences and my take on life, and then those other songs are for other people to write. But I have to write from my heart.
No, I love that. I think that's important, when you think of it. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the thing about America is a country of the free, and
Yeah.
then you're allowed to use your voice. That's where we're going today. There's places, there's songs like New York, New York, then there's New York with, you think about Alicia Keys, and then Billy Joel singing about New York. And then, it's like, do you know your way to San Jose? There's so much about when we think about all the places. Everybody, look in the episode notes for this Spotify playlist created between Johnny and also Katie and myself. I think it may end up at 250. I don't know. We'll try, but maybe we'll have it by next year, 4th of July weekend, where the real 250 is. Maybe we'll just keep adding to it, and we'll just this as a series, the music of America. Maybe we should do that. We'll do it as a series. Yeah, let's do it as a series, and we'll keep adding to this playlist. So we have 250 songs. And everyone listening, please go on social media and let us know. Comment. Let us know what your song is about your region. There's so many independent musicians, like I was talking about Shelley King, who has written songs about this country. Ryan Bingham is really huge about that too. You talk about the Nelsons. My gosh, Willie Nelson, his sons too. It's I know Willie Nelson's son Lucas has just done a whole album that's very much Americana, and Ryan Bingham has just put out a song today as we record called Americana. So I think travel is part of that. Do you think so in music, Johnny? That travel is, when we think about road tripping, that is part of the American world, isn't it? Road tripping and travel.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. When I drive, on long road trips, I mean, I've always got music going, and I have some playlists that I put together of songs that I like to listen to on the road that just either they bring back memories, or they keep me awake, or but
Keeping
they
you awake is important on the road.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's I think that there's something about the radio and the road, that makes the trip much more meaningful. Those songs like I used to, when I took a road trip to Montana when I was real young in a Suzuki Samurai that I owned at the time. It was a convertible, so I drove from from LA to Billings, Montana, and back, and just being with the wind blowing through my hair. And at the time, Corey Hart album was really popular, and there were 3 songs on that album. Young Man Running is one of them that I loved. And every time I hear those songs, it reminds me of that road trip, because I really was into that album.
Music in the road.
Radio,
a good song.
You paved the way. That's that's one of your
I was thinking about the American landscape when I wrote that first verse of that song, so that's why I put that in there. Because
also about the people that paved the way.
Exactly.
I look at it as kind of looking at people like John Lewis and is it John or Joe? Oh my gosh, you're talking about Joan Baez and Martin Luther King and people that really stood up for, hey, we want a positive change. That's how I looked at the song, thanking those people that did that.
Yeah.
Well, we didn't get political at all. We did very good. Today's show. Oh, no. All right. So before we go, each one of us give one song from our playlist that we want people to listen to, because we'll be here for days if we talk about this playlist. But I really appreciate this show with you both, and we'll do more. And I know Nancy's sitting here going, I want to talk about the Beach Boys and Bruce Springsteen, right? Yeah. Bruce Springsteen. Yeah. Yeah, that's it. And honestly, there is no playlist that Nancy will do without having who is your, come on. No, not Dean Martin, but then your dude from the Animals. Eric Burton has to be part of everything, even though he's not from this country. He gets to be. He lived here, so that's okay. That's okay. So, yeah, let's look at that. So let's go to you, Katie. The song you want everybody to listen to.
Yes, the train they call the City of New Orleans, because it's talking about the ending of the train, which did so much in building this country, and then the train slowly has died, and now it's just a memory. It's not the usual way of traveling.
Wow, you're really right about that. That's
well, that line in there where he says the conductor will now says passengers will please refrain. This train has got the disappearing railroad blues. And the steam engine, and then even the trains. I mean, we don't see them like at one time. They were the way of going. One of my favorite stories, I started with the hook line of I spent the night in a boxcar, and it was about the Chattanooga Choo Choo, the very elaborate, fancy boxcars that you stay in there at the end of Chattanooga at the hotel, which are made up the way the Carnegies and the Rockefellers would travel back in the day when they traveled by train.
I think you're really right. The railroad changed everything, you know?
The Civil War, that was the first time there was a railroad that could transport soldiers. And since then, and I mean, so much that the railroad has changed.
It's amazing when you think about it. Oh, Johnny, for you, what's your song?
Well, you just mentioned the Beach Boys, and I think since Brian Wilson just passed recently, it's a fun song. It's not anything deep or anything, but, California Girls. I'm a California boy, so I think I'll go with the Beach Boys.
It's a good song. You said best, I think.
Yeah, I think so. I think I'm going to go with Mellencamp. I think so, because pink houses, it's like the American dream, little pink houses for you and me. And he writes of the heartland of America. The Midwest gets left over, but there is so much art. I can't tell you how misconceived the Midwest is. The art in this corridor that we're traveling up and down is insane. And when you look up the music history, it's amazing. I do want to go to Muddy Waters, though, but
Kansas is like that. Lucas, Kansas, if you want to see art, they have built the whole tourism industry with very, very little to go with. I think there's less than 1,000 people in Lucas. I mean, it's it's a town nobody's ever heard of until you go there, and then you never forget it.
Exactly. The Midwest is so unknown. It's insane. And so I just I think I want to do that. Pink houses, there's a Mellencamp Highway. There's a Jimmy Garcia Highway, Joe Garcia, sorry. There's all these musical highways dedicated to musicians, which is cool. But I just kind of feel like little pink houses for you and me. It's that we're going to get married, we're in love, we're happy, and we're going to get a little pink house. We're going to do this and that. Then there's, Blood on a Scarecrow in the next.
It doesn't always work that way.
Yeah, but it's like this hope. And maybe we all have little pink houses. And I say this also because we did an interview about, and this is when we first started recording, it was about 18 years ago. We did an interview with the lawyers who worked on a suit on a case on the pink house, the little pink house, or pink house or the little pink house. And it was when the U.S. government took over a section of housing. And eminent domain. And this was a famous case, the Pink House. It was an eminent domain situation, and how governments could do that. And when we lived in 29 Palms, there was a military eminent domain thing that was about to happen. And some parts did, some parts didn't. And people would give up their houses to get a little payment. For some people, it worked. But eminent domain does happen in our country. Just saying, you could be happy living there and someone could come up and say, no, we're going to put a road through this and you need to sell out to us. And so that's something to look at. I mean, we're not trying to be depressing here about our country, but Little Pink House, when we did that interview, I was like, wow, it's so crazy that it was a pink house, and Mellencamp has this song of Little Pink House for You and Me. And yet this pink house, I think it was in New Jersey, and she lived on this little water area, and they're like, no, we're going to do this. And I can't remember the whole story. I mean, it was a long time ago, but
Oh, wow.
yeah, I always just thought, like, every time I hear pink houses, I think of eminent domain, but also hope and, people getting together for that dream of, we just want to have love in a house. We want our little house. We want our family. We want to create a family. We want barbecues in the backyard. We want all that, right? And we want a little money so that we can go on vacation once a year. That was pretty much it, isn't it? We want our kids to be able to go to school. We want to do that, And so I think that song to me is that hope of that. But then the pink house of the eminent domain, I always went, that is such a weird thing of pink house. And the other part of the pink house is in South Africa. We stayed in these, and this is South Africa, so not here, on a farm, and they called it the pink kamer. Pink in Afrikaans is punk instead of punk with a accent. The pink kamer is your bathroom, which meant in these old areas of farming lands, it was the generator room, not the generator, but the pink kamer means you went outside to the bathroom. Like you had an outhouse. And so that was the pink commerce. So I think this is really interesting. So anyway, I'm being weird. So there you go. Here's to the pink houses of the world and this country. May we all keep them and have hope. Thank you so much. And let's continue this conversation. I think we should do it seasonally. I think we should do America in the seasons. I love this. Let's make an effort. We'll go to 250 songs by 4th of July next year. I love it.
Great.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. Everyone, hearjohnny.com is the website to go to for Johnny. You've got more music coming up in the works. Am I right about that?
Yeah, we're working on a music video. So should be soon.
Can you tell us the song? Or
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, it's called "Find a Place." It's a song about meditation. A 9-time Grammy-nominated saxophonist Gerald Albright plays on the song.
No way. No, he's amazing. Oh my gosh, that's amazing. That's exciting. Are you excited?
Yeah, I am very much.
And Paco working on it?
Yeah, Paco's working on it. It looks like it's going to come out in August. I believe it just Paco's swamped, so I can't push him. So as soon as we can get the video done, then we'll get it out.
Yeah, we want to keep Johnny married. Yeah. Okay, but Paco, come on. Maybe you have to take over the cooking duty. He's cooking and making videos, but I'm excited. I can't wait to hear it and see it. And maybe next month we'll be able to talk about it since it'll be August.
Yeah.
So yes, love that. Love that. Katie, you're doing good with your book. Anything else that people should know?
With the books right now, so swamped. Like I said, I was almost 3 weeks on the road. So I've been between the Chicago IPW, and then I set myself 2 trips before that. And 3 trips afterwards, especially the Johnson City and Jonesboro. I had never heard of the state of Franklin. And there's a street in Johnson City named State of Franklin Highway. And when I found out there existed a state of Franklin at one time. It never got thoroughly approved in the United States, and now it's part of Kentucky. The whole story just got me. I'm writing a lot, and just an awful lot of stuff I got to sit down and write. And my next trip is going to be to California, down in your country, over there, not Bakersfield, Buena I forgot where I'm going. It's when you go too many places. Buena Vista.
Buena Park?
Buena Park, right. And that's going to be in August. So I got to get everything that I've got to write. I got to get finished writing for that because I hate writing on the road.
No, but that's awesome that you're going to go there. Buena Park is,
I didn't think I was going to get the trip because it's very food focused, and history and culture and music and things, civil rights trail, that sort of stuff is kind of more my thing. But I do write food too. I mean, you've got to eat, let's face it. Nothing wrong with food.
Well, all the food is part of culture.
Yeah. Well, I'm doing a piece right now called Baptist and Bourbon. And the
Mhm.
catch line of that is Baptist and bourbon usually don't go well together.
Well,
But
apparently they
about
do.
Elijah
Well,
Craig
listen,
was a
thank goodness
Baptist
for.
minister, and he started.
Yeah,
He's considered the father of bourbon.
I think he's a good man, and all the the mission trail going up, they brought wine in. So we're happy with that. I think you're going to enjoy California, and I just want to say Bakersfield sound, everybody. When we talk about sound and music,
Right.
I think
Streets
we've
of
forgotten that.
Bakersfield was one of my choices on there. Old Buck Owens song.
Buck Owens, yeah,
You
Buck
can't
Owens.
judge me.
Yeah.
Somehow you can't judge me unless you've walked the streets of Bakersfield. He was a Okie, like Merle Haggard, Okie from Muskogee, and came over from Oklahoma during the Dust Bowl problems and ended up in Bakersfield.
Yeah, exactly.
The
Now,
Buck
John,
Owens Road in Bakersfield.
Right,
yeah.
yeah. He did a
Yeah,
lot
well,
in Bakersfield. And that,
well, Bakersfield was Johnny's backyard.
yeah, is it?
Yeah.
Well, that was one of the, I don't know if there's a rough area, but one of the lines in the song is about, you can't judge me. About people judging him without knowing him. That you have no right to judge me if you haven't walked the streets of Bakersfield.
Well, I
Mhm,
just
yeah.
have really good food there. And there's a Basque culture there too. And so
So
that's
Yeah.
there's going to be a lot of good food on this trip. I'll come back weighing 10
Mhm.
more pounds.
oh, well, join my club. Come hang out with me. Yeah,
You gained 10 pounds.
I just, I sit at a computer too much now, and thank God
too.
for dog walking. Yeah, who wants to go for a walk? So, I said that, and then now I got a little face looking at me.
Well,
All right,
cats
well,
do their
everyone,
own walkings.
I'm going to do some walking because I've been at the computer so much. So thank you all
Like
so
Pat
much.
Domino walking to New Orleans while you.
That's it. Yeah,
It's got that beat.
Oh,
Walking to New Orleans, and I can't sing.
what about walking in Memphis?
Well, that's a great song.
Walking in
Memphis.
Memphis is Randy Newman, isn't it?
I don't actually know, but I can't think of who it is. But
I'm gonna walking in Memphis is
I have heard it.
Mark Cohn sing it.
I have
It's
heard
Mark Cohn. It's Mark Cohn. Not
it. Okay.
why did I think Randy Newman? It kind of sounds like him, but it is Walking in Memphis was written and performed by Mark Cohn, released in 1991. So there it is. It tells the story of him going to Memphis, Tennessee, seeking inspiration for his songwriting. And the song references several iconic Memphis locations and figures, including Al Green, Elvis Presley, and Beale Street. Thank you, AI, for giving us that answer.
I love.
Johnny hates AI, so I'm sorry, Johnny. But there you go.
I just
That's what
don't
it
trust
says.
him all the time.
No, I don't
yeah,
either. I
whatever.
don't either. So take it with a spoon of salt.
Take it
or
to
sugar.
the limit this time.
Oh, yeah, I like that. The Eagles. There you go. Oh, and speaking of that, so standing in the corner in Winslow, Arizona. All right. So you've got to go there if everyone's road tripping this year. And you go through on, 40, go through Winslow, Arizona, pull over Route 66, go stand on the corner and hang out with the Eagles. And they have an Eagle Park and the Eagles Park. Well, it's a park with the Eagles in there. And they do have the flatbed truck. So it's cool.
Yep.
All right, we're going. Thank you all. Keep up with us. Go to
you.
YouTubeJohnny.com, AmericanRoads.net, and of course, Big Blend Radio. Thank you for listening to Big Blend Radio. Keep up with our shows at BigBlendRadio.com.